Welcome. Time to rant about my favorite MMO again. Warning, this video will talk about Dawntrail characters and story, so please complete the MSQ first before watching. Okay, with that out of the way, this expansion has been pretty divisive, which is honestly normal and happens all the time. Some like the summer vacation theme and participating in cooking competitions, some don't. Some love the second part, the one with Orwellian horrors and Canadian Medicare. Some think it comes out too suddenly out of nowhere. Some like Gulool, some say her development is confusing and too rushed. But I think there's one part of the expansion that the vast majority of people do like and agree that it's great. And that part is the first president of Tural, the mighty and wise Gulool Ja Ja. This guy is awesome. Since it's basically given that Tural is FF14's version of America's, I will claim right here that he is one of, if not the most Chad president of America that we have ever seen across any form of media. But what makes him good? Any character can be judged on how they're presented, what is their backstory in the setting, and what is the motivation for their actions. That's true for main characters and side characters, though side characters more often can exist without much of a backstory or even motivation. Gulool Ja Ja falls into a type of side characters that are larger than life in more ways than one. This is a very superficial reason, but I do believe the main reason he's liked so much is because of how exaggerated he is. He makes an impression. And in general, characters of his type are obviously strong and imposing, but they are also defined by their personality. And that is very important. There are strong and intimidating characters that don't even have to talk to steal the show and impose a sense of dread. But what if someone powerful is also someone you can just have a normal conversation with? There is something endearing in that. I also like the idea that truly strong people don't have to put anyone down, and so they are naturally kind. Characters like that often have to be cartoonishly exaggerated, and so we can readily find some anime examples. There's Major Armstrong from Fullmetal Alchemist, who is huge and intimidating, but always ready to cheer you up with his muscles, and is one of the kindest characters in the show. Or All Might from My Hero Academia, who is just constantly projecting raw power and charisma. At least while he's in the Might mode, that is, though he always remains a fatherly mentor type figure. Even though I mentioned that strong people are kind, surprisingly these type of characters can make pretty good antagonists too. August, from the game Azura's Wrath, is exactly that. He looks similar to the protagonist, but he is bigger, making him look more powerful, and he trained him, which gives him fatherly mentor vibes too. And when it's time to confront August, he openly states how he simply likes to fight and have a good time. It's really hard to feel angry about someone honest like that. Same can be said about one of the most meme-worthy antagonists, Senator Armstrong. Wait, Armstrong? Anyways, this guy is massive and so powerful that he can literally crumple the protagonist into a ball. And he is so open about his evil plan that it is kinda endearing. And he doesn't really hold malice towards the protagonist during his speech. When he thinks that Raiden might agree with him, he literally picks him up and starts dusting him off. It's harder to find good exaggerated examples in live-action movies, but I think Drax from the Guardians of the Galaxy fits the type pretty well. Physically he is incredibly strong and resilient, with an imposing build, but he is also extremely open about his emotions. When he wants to laugh, he will laugh louder than anyone in the room. When he remembers sad things, he will feel overwhelming sadness that would crush the lesser man. And I find it really interesting that he ends up being the dad of the team. Because that's what Gulool Ja Ja also is. He is so powerful that he created a nation spanning 2 continents. And he is not above simply talking to you or having a sparring match just for fun. But also he is a father of 3 and is often worrying about his children. So this presentation is what makes Gulool Ja Ja great. He is larger than life, he is likable, he is approachable. But I did mention other aspects of characters, and what makes Gulool Ja Ja the best new side character is the lore. Because his backstory is not just part of the lore, his backstory pretty much defines most of the lore for the expansion. And I am saying most only because Alexandria also exists. It would have been pretty much all the lore otherwise. Out of 4 characters involved in the presidential race, 3 are Gulool Ja Ja's children, real and adopted. The 4th one exists only because Gulool Ja Ja is two-headed and blessed and is the ruler of Tural. To be fair, out of important expansion characters, there is Erenville, who is less affected by the right of succession, but even he is interested in the Golden City, which is the end goal of the race and is also tied to Gulool Ja Ja. Right of succession is of course the huge story point, taking up a lot of the expansion, and that whole thing was planned, organized and announced by Gulool Ja Ja. He proclaimed it, he set the rules that allowed outsiders to join. If not for Gulool Ja Ja, we would not have had our adventure in Tural, period. And then of course there's Tural itself. During the first part of the story we are beaten over the head with how Gulool Ja Ja has founded the country and united the tribes. Decades ago he already became for Tural what Warrior of Light is to Eorzea. That is well known. But what I really like is a more subtle way of showing how much Gulool Ja Ja affected the new nation. This can be seen even in how the capital is located. Placement of Tuliyollal is a logical choice for someone like Gulool Ja Ja, as that place oversees a bridge between the continents. Once built by the giants as means to invade the north, now used as a connection between people from north and the south, showing that the ruler wants to be close to people of both continents. Tuliyollal is pretty much Gulool Ja Ja personified, overseeing all people of both continents and welcoming all. And then there are terms used in Tural which I find most fascinating. Think about it. The ruler is named Dawn Servant, and Gulool Ja Ja is the first Dawn Servant. Not only there were none before him, the name did not exist before him. I am pretty sure, when creating the nation, he chose that name himself, to remind himself and future rulers that the ruler is really only the servant of the people. Very obvious naming doesn't stop there. Two heads of Gulool Ja Ja are called vows, of resolve and reason respectively. That is literally his vow to people that he would rule with those two traits. And then there are his children, who are named promises, from first to third. Once again, this is supposed to be taken quite literally. They are his promises to Tural's future. And of course, when Vuklamat and Kona become rulers, they graduate from being promises to vows. All that language comes from how Gulool Ja Ja saw the role of the ruler, and it's absolutely great way to show his point of view and motivation without having him explain it outright. Right of succession also uses the pre-established principles of the nation. The point of it was not winning by any cost, but learning about the tribes of Tural. And there is another practice like that we know of. In the Hanu Hanu side quest line, we meet a Tuliyollal guard. He is sent to Okhanu to oversee the armor-making process, which makes him learn about the tribe's traditions. And again, I am pretty sure that this practice was started by Gulool Ja Ja himself, who wanted different people of Tural to learn of and from each other. And when he was making up the right of succession, that idea was used as a template for the contest. Principles founded during creation of Tural are generally a theme. During one of the crafter quests in Tuliyollal, you glimpse a history of Turali language creation. Apparently Gulool Ja Ja ordered the research of all tribes' languages to create a new alphabet. But in the end, it was decided to use Eorzean alphabet to make the new writing system equal for all, and without giving advantage to the language of any existing tribe. Again, this shows how Gulool Ja Ja thinks and what was his goal when creating the nation. The creation of right of succession also touches a bit on Gulool Ja Ja's current motivation. We don't get too much of it, but we know that he is driven by his desire to maintain prosperous and peaceful Tural, and also to make sure his children respect Turali's traditions. That is why the rite is structured like it is, and it's why all three promises can participate. I also find it quite amusing when he admits that he was ready to not step down as a ruler if he didn't like the result of the rite. This is such a blatant admission of how he can use his power, and at the same time how much he cares for the nation having a good ruler. And I believe he would have gotten away with it, since he is so well liked already. Of course Gulool Ja Ja is not infallible. Right of succession ends in Mamuk, where things have completely deteriorated, to the point of locals not even speaking to outsiders. And I do wonder why Gulool Ja Ja never did anything about that. It is possible that he just felt that it is not his right to change how Mamulja in Mamuk decide to live. Mamulja are his tribe, and when Tural was founded, a lot of them left for Tuliyollal, abandoning the inhospitable lands of Lower Yaktel. But those who remained held this land and idea of blessed siblings with a burning passion. And we know that tribes are allowed to have their own traditions and they will be respected. In the end, I think it would have just been impossible for Gulool Ja Ja to convince his people to stop, while he himself is a symbol of that practice. Though I am not sure if he fully planned for this tradition to be dismantled during the rite of succession by Vuklamat and Kona. And, speaking of Vuklamat and Kona and Zoral Ja, another fault of Gulool Ja Ja is his children, which is pretty natural. Children will rarely turn out how you expect them to. Makes him relatable as a parent, especially in how differently he approached each child. Zoral Ja definitely got the most attention from his father, probably the most of training too. He became a great fighter, second only to Gulool Ja Ja himself. But that was the problem. While everyone called him first promise and a miracle, he felt more and more inferior. Not being able to match his father's strength, he felt like he is never good enough, which in turn made him into the antagonist out of pure despair. Kona seems the furthest from his father. Maybe it is because we only talk to the head of resolve. Maybe Kona had a great relationship with the head of reason. But out of all siblings, Kona looks like the one least likely to train with Gulool Ja Ja. So instead Gulool Ja Ja did what all parents do to the children they cannot connect with. He sent his son to college. The very best college, mind you, but that has pushed Kona from understanding his father's vision and to Raleigh way of doing things. For Vuklamat, Gulool Ja Ja hired a nursemaid to provide some motherly presence, and he tried to cultivate in Vuklamat love for all people of Tural, which was probably easy to do. Vuklamat was inspired by everything her father did, hoping to imitate him, and she learned of Tuliyollal and its people, because the city is pretty much the manifestation of Gulool Ja Ja's ideas. It seems though that he kept her close to home, more protected, so she ended up being less competent and knowledgeable about all the things outside of Tuliyollal. After Gulool Ja Ja fought Warrior of Light, he did confess that Vuklamat is not ready to rule, but at the same time it felt like he had the greatest hope for her in the rite of succession, as her ideals were close to his own. And, at the end of the rite, we did have two of his children inheriting his titles and becoming vows of resolve and reason. Once again, taking titles, made up by their father, that show their devotion to people. And unfortunately we have gotten the tragedy of Zoral Ja. A lot of people say that Zoral Ja acts like an absolutely cartoonish villain, fighting his father in a duel, issuing a challenge and leaving instead of conquering Tuliyollal and so on. And it is absolutely so. But all that is still the influence of Gulool Ja Ja, even after his death. Zoral Ja isn't really interested in conquering anything, he just wants to prove he is stronger than his father. And when he defeats Gulool Ja Ja using extra response cheating method, he is not satisfied. So he issues a challenge to Vuklamat and others who have defeated the shadow of Gulool Ja Ja in Mamuk. To the very end, Zoral Ja believes that he achieved everything on his own, and to the very end he is suffering from fear that it is still never enough, which is why his awakened state is two-headed Mamulja, like his father, but with one neck missing the head. Even in this state he cannot let go of his own perceived inadequacy. Zoral Ja does some really villainous things, but in the end he is a tragic character exactly because of how he saw himself in comparison to Gulool Ja Ja. Afterwards we go after Sphene in the main story, and Gulool Ja Ja is not influencing this part, but still, he is affecting most of the Dawntrail MSQ, not to mention 80 years of Tural lore before that, which puts him many steps above the other side characters. Erenville's mom has much more screen time, but she is defined by what happens in the setting, not the other way around. Same can be said about Otis, who is also similar in character to Gulool Ja Ja, strong, kind and expressive, but his story is defined by the setting. Even Vuklamat, who is the main character of the expansion, is defined by the setting, specifically, once again, her relation to Gulool Ja Ja. Gulool Ja Ja proudly stands above all. He is not defined by the setting of the expansion. He literally made that setting and then graciously allowed us to travel there. Would have been absolutely horrible if he was not likable, but he is, and he is great. And he is made even better by the lore tied to his story, and the setting is improved by letting you see glimpses of his personality in it. So I consider Gulool Ja Ja to be an absolute win for the character presentation and world building at the same time. And that is all I have to say for today.